Okay, I think we are live. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Today's webinar is going to be about how to get more water damage leads from Google Local Services ads. If you can hear me, please type a 1 in the chat. Just I want to make sure you can hear me and see me for those that have joined. Awesome, Chuck. Thank you. Great, Clay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to give it just a minute here. We've got some more people trickling in. Again, today's topic is going to be focused on water damage, Google Local Services ads. And so that's going to be, we're going to talk about lots of different things related to it as far as how to set it up, how to optimize it, all of those sort of things. And then we're going to, okay. And if you could, go ahead and mute yourself, just so we've got the focus here. Okay, perfect. All right, so we're going to give it just a minute here. Again, the topic today is water damage, Google Local Services ads. I just want to kind of give a pulse for everybody that is in the room now. Are you currently running Google Guaranteed or Google Local Service ads? If you are, go and put a $sign in the chat. I just want to find out who, and gear a lot of this towards you guys here. So, Aaron, it looks like you're running Google Local Service ads. Okay, thank you for that. Thanks, Chuck. Yep. And if you're not running Google Local Services ads, go ahead and put a 1 in there. I just want to see who is not running it or who is kind of pending. I don't know for sure. Okay, Brian, gotcha. Perfect. Okay, so great. I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to walk you through everything that we know about running Google Local Service ads, and this is experience from working with. We have probably around 50 active Google Local Service campaigns that we run on a monthly basis right now. And we've had a ton of experience since the Google Local Services ads launched. And there's been a lot that's changed over the last couple of years with it, and there's continual changes along the way. So we'll share with you what works, how to set up for it, how to sign up for it, how to optimize it, how to get the best results. And if things are stuck, I'm going to give you some pointers on how to take a look at that as well. So let me share my screen here, and we will get started. So. Perfect. Okay, thanks everybody. All right, so we're going to go ahead and started. Today's topic, again, water damage, Google Local Service ads, everything you need to know about it as of June 2024. All right, and so just to give you a little timeline here, what we're going to talk about over the next 30 minutes or so, quick introduction, some common issues we see, our process, what works, and we're going to set some action items after this webinar that you can take place and work on and make sure that you're moving this forward afterwards. And if you have any additional questions, I'll stay at the end. Happy to answer any questions, anything that's got you stuck on it. And if you need help, I'm here to answer those questions. So a little bit about me. I have a passion for the industry. I've been doing this for over 7 years now. And the way I got into this industry was my home was impacted by a flood. And so I was that homeowner on the other end, and I didn't know who to reach, right? And so definitely don't want to go into a whole bunch of story on this, but at the end of the day, that's where my passion comes from. And luckily, I've been able to help a lot of, with the help of my team, a lot of damage restoration companies across the country connect with other homeowners just like me, right? And so along the way here, we've worked a lot of different companies here, from anywhere from East Coast to West Coast to North to South. And along that way, I've been able to share some of this passion via podcast and a book that I wrote as well about our blueprint on how we do things. Again, today is about Google Local Services, but if you stay to the end of the webinar, I'm going to give you a link where you can get a free copy of the book. And this is our blueprint that we use, along with some checklists that you can help improve your online presence and online marketing efforts to reach more people in the industry, right, that need your help. So if you could, just for the next 30 minutes, please turn off your cell phones, turn off Facebook. Give me some focus here, and what we focus on expands and changes, right? So I just asked for 30 minutes here, and I promise you that this will be worth it, and you'll get some value out of this at the end. Okay. So my goal in 2024, and I've stated this since January, is to help double the sales of 50 damage restoration contractors, whether I work with them directly from a marketing standpoint, or whether I share some value here. And so I truly believe that of a giving mindset, and that's my whole goal of this. If we have conversations after the fact and I can help you out in any way, definitely reach out to me. I'm an open book, and you'll see that I'm just going to basically give you a whole strategy and everything that works. And so that's kind of where we're coming from with this. Some of the common issues we see in the industry is there's tons of competition, right? And so you'll see that in any given market, depending on how big you are, right, you're going to have tons of competitors in there trying to get the same jobs you are, right? And it's super expensive to get that phone to ring. And there's up and down results on any given month, and there's just really hard to determine where you need to be focusing and what process you need to follow to get that visibility. And really, in this industry, unlike many other home services industries or other niches, it's about visibility. If you're not at the top of Google, homeowners aren't doing research, right? And so ultimately, what we're trying to do here is increase that visibility, and Google Local Services will absolutely do that, right? And so the harsh reality of the industry is that these companies that get it, and I'm not saying that if you're not doing Google Local Services, you're not getting it. But what I'm saying is that if you have a strategy in place, you're going to be able to pick off many of those jobs that the 10% of those companies that do have it in place are getting, right? And so they're getting about 90% of the revenue, right? And so ultimately, I want to give you the resources to be able to increase that visibility for you in your market, right? And so this little chart here kind of explains what I mean by that is that, most companies provide an amazing service, and they have truly the best interests at heart for the company or the clients that they're working with, homeowners or businesses. But many people don't know who you are, right? Or know that you provide that service. And, so sometimes you're either if you go up to the top left there, you're paying per lead, or other times you're trying to build that referral base, right? And so you need to have a mix of both in this industry. And so you need to become that best known company in the area. And that's the ultimate goal here, right? And Google Local Services is one of those options that can help you do that along the way, right? So I believe that you need to have a comprehensive approach in this industry. Today's, again, webinar is about Google Local Services, but you need to have multiple fishing poles in the water. Now, don't take it as, hey, you're just starting out in industry, I need to do all of these things, right? That's absolutely not the case. At the end of the day, you need to start somewhere, and Google Local Services is a great starting point for companies that are just getting in and wanting to do some online advertising and marketing, right? So these are all the things that I recommend for the industry, but you got to start somewhere. And so today we're going to talk about water damage for Google Local Services ads. And just kind of a recap, I did a webinar at the beginning of this year called, what works in 2024, right? And so there's two different approaches here on an online perspective. There's free traffic, then there's paid traffic, right? And so, just to kind of break those down a little bit as a reminder, if you haven't seen the 2024 webinar, I'm going to give you the link after this, and we'll talk about all of these strategies in that webinar, but and you can watch the recording of that. But, the free traffic side of it is having a website, having Google Maps, having YouTube, Bing, Apple, Yelp, social media. Those are all different free traffic sources. And so from a paid traffic standpoint, you've got Google ads, you've got Google Local Service ads, or it's also called Google Guaranteed. Then you got Instagram, Facebook, Bing, Yelp, and it can be overwhelming. You can be like, well, where do I start? Where do I start, right? And so a great starting point is to have your Google Local Service ads campaign set up, and that's what we're going to talk about here. Ultimately, what this program is, it's just Google's way of saying these are verified and vetted out companies that have proven that they are a legit company and an owner that is a person versus a lead generation company or someone that's selling leads or someone doing SEO or these sort of things. And so you have to go through some checks and in order to do that, right? And so just an overview of that process there, it kind of talks about some of the highlights of this service. And we're going to dive into it in more detail here, okay? So why is Google Guaranteed important? It's important because it's at the top of the page, right? And so with 95% of the search traffic online going to use Google, um, you know, homeowners are not going to, if you're going to be remodeling your backyard, right, you're going to get quotes and you're going to do all of these sort of things. Homeowners are not going to search around and try to contact 5 different companies, right? And so if you can be at the top of the page where Google Guaranteed is here, hopefully you can see my cursor up there, that is going to give you a ton of visibility. And as you can see here, it has these stars on it, right? And so the stars is something like the Amazon effect is what I like to call it, right? How many of us went out to Amazon and never purchased a product that had no stars, right? And so it's really great placement and great reputation to make them feel like, hey, I can call this company and they're going to help me solve my emergency issue, right? Below that, you see Google Ads, you see Google Business, Google Business Profile, Google Maps, right? And then you've got organic here. So about 50% of the page is usually where most of the calls are coming from. I'm not caring about clicks and impressions and all that stuff like that. With managing tons of different companies' profiles online and things like that, what ultimately counts is the phone call, right? A qualified phone call, calling about a service you have and in your service area. And so these are the strategies that we recommend. And so let's dive a little bit more into Google Guaranteed. You'll see that all interchange the name Google Guaranteed and Google Local Services. It's called the same thing. So Google Local Service ads matter because, again, you show up quickly. It's like if you've ever been to Disney or Universal, those sorts of things, you get a fast pass, right, and jump to the front of the line. And, of course, you have to pay for that fast pass, right? So that's you can think of it that way. And, there's some stats there about 80% of consumers use Google to do research, right? It's a number one place that if a homeowner or a business is going to be searching on their own, meaning they didn't go to their insurance company or they didn't go to call a plumber to stop a leak, they're going to pull up their cell phone and that's where they're going to try to find a solution to their problem, right? And so we want to make sure we're showing up on mobile and desktop, and Google Local Services helps you do that. And these are usually high intent people looking for solutions in an emergency situation. Not all of them are that case, but many of them are. And you have to have a strategy really that's going to help you win in this area. And so we're going to dive into that a little bit more in detail. Just to give you a recap here, when we look at an overall marketing approach for any restoration company, you have sort of this upside down pyramid here that I'm looking at. And so you have at the bottom, these are the organic foundation, your social media, your Google Maps location, your website, and sort of those things, right? And then as you work your way up, you have paid ads and Google Local Services ads, right? And so that's where we're focusing today. You have other areas where you're building a branding and you're building a referral situation, right? That is still important in this industry. You want to ultimately, once you have a customer, you want to have them as life, and they're going to refer other people to you, right? So we're not going to really focus on this today, but where we're going to be at is right in here. Okay. So how do Google Local Services ads work? Before I dive in, everybody still hear me? Press a number 2 in the chat if you hear me. Everything making sense to you? Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Stacy. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's dive into the meat of this, right? How does Google Local Services ads work? You must complete what's called a Google Local Service application, all right? And this is different from Google pay-per-click or Google Ads. If you've ever ran those sort of things, which are super expensive in this industry, and you can waste a lot of money real quickly. I'm going to dive in why Google Local Services ads are a better ROI here, okay? But Google will run a background check, and they're also going to ask for a firm level IICR certification. And what I mean by firm level, it has to have your company name on it. And you also have to provide insurance documentation with a certificate of insurance showing they have $1 million in liability coverage. These are important things that you have to get in place. Doesn't mean you can't sign up, start the process and get going and then add these in there. But these are things that you're going to absolutely need. And I'll dive into them a little bit more in detail. But firm level certification is basically, it says you have your company name on it, and that company name on that IICRC document, they send PDFs over now. But that has to be the exact same name as what you have on your Google Maps because what's important here is they connect together. Google Maps and Google Local Service Ads connect together, and if they match up, it's going to make it super easy for you to get approved. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you don't have a firm level certification, contact IICRC, ask them for it. They deal with this all the time. I believe you have to pay a fee for that. I don't think it's that expensive, but you have to pay for a fee for that extra license, and they'll send you over a PDF copy of that or an online version. And that's what you'll need for that. Once approved, basically the way it works is it's sort of a pay-per-lead basis, right? And so these ranges can run from some markets at $50, some $250, and some $500. Okay, and so there'll be a wide range depending on how many people are advertising in that area, what the volume is, and whatnot. And so if you're located in a very competitive area, let's say in Florida and Miami, you're going to pay a lot more than you would if you're in Topeka, Kansas, right? So just an example, there's a wide spread there, but you can improve these over time. When I'm going to give you some tips on how to improve that cost per lead through a dispute process that I'll give you some tips on, right? So hopefully that makes sense there. How are you charged for Google Local Service Ads, right? So this is one that can be a little bit confusing the way it works, right? So in Google pay-per-click, I'll just use that as a reference. You're charged every time somebody clicks on that ad that you have. Okay, so if you've ever ran Google pay-per-click, you get a click, you're going to get charged, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. With Google Local Services, the way it works is you set a weekly budget, and they will give you an estimate on how many leads they feel you could potentially get, and that range is going to be false. I'm just telling you right now. So what they say is they'll give, let's say you set a budget of saying, I'm going to spend $1,000 a week, okay? And they're going to say, maybe we're going to get 10 to 20 leads. Usually that is not accurate. I don't know why they're kind of giving those false representations, but usually those are peak numbers. So keep that in mind when you set that budget there. And so what I typically recommend, Chuck, yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's one of these things. I don't know why they do it that way, but I believe it's peak numbers is what they're referencing here. And so the leads will differ on day-to-day basis. So once you get approved for this, it's a kind of a rotation, right? And so usually you never hit that spend unless there's a big event in your area. So let's say there's a big weather event or those sort of things, and there's just more volume out there, right? So you will sometimes hit that weekly budget, but most of the time you will not. And here's the thing, though, is you can get credits back for charges if something is either a solicitation or somebody calling about an employment job or a repeat caller. So we'll talk about how to do that here shortly, right? So leads. The leads that don't count. So the dispute categories. This is where you're going to really drive home the return on investment or improved costs of this service. If you set up Google Local Service Ads and you set your budget, you set everything else up, and you forget about it, and you just let it go behind the scenes, you're going to be missing out on getting the best cost per lead coming in there, right? Okay, so there's 4 different categories. Solicitations, kind of common sense there, people looking for employment and everything. Spam, location not served, and services not offered, right? And so I'm going to show you what the dispute process looks like and how you do that. But this is one of the most critical components that we find that we get best results for our clients, because we listen to every single call that comes through there. And if it's one of these categories, we're going to flag it as a dispute. Sometimes Google will automatically credit that. Sometimes you have to open a ticket, right? But doing that extra effort drives down that lead cost, right? So if you're not doing this today, it's extremely important. Some of the current feedback we're getting on Google Local Service Ads, the cost is way less than pay-per-click on a typical basis, because these are qualified people. You can dispute the leads, and sometimes on pay-per-click, it takes too much volume, too many clicks, and there's a little bit of spam issues there. There's tools that you can put in place to prevent that, but ultimately you get a lower cost per click on the Google Local Services ads, and you're at the top of the visibility, right? So there's usually higher quality leads. If you've ever done Angie's List or Home Advisor, right, You never know what you're going to get in that place, right? And so this is actually above that. They do cost more, but you're typically going to be a more qualified person through this Google Local Services. And ultimately, it gets a solid ROI, right? And if you set it up correctly and follow the steps I'm just about to go through here, right? So, but keep in mind there are more expensive areas and competition areas. So when I give you that range, right, keep in mind that it is varies depending on the area. So again, just to recap here, Google Local Services Ads is at the top. Google Guaranteed is at the top. And that's why this is the most important, okay? It's about visibility, right? And if you can have multiple fishing poles in the water, meaning you have Google Guaranteed and you have Google Maps and maybe even pay-per-click right here, you're going to get more bites, okay? And so that's the goal here in this industry. Why is it a no-brainer for most water damage restoration companies? You show up at the top. You only pay per lead basis. It's a lower cost per pay-per-click, more high-quality leads, and you can modify your budget based on your schedules. You can increase and decrease along the way, okay? So keep that in mind. Now, there's a lot that I just went over right there. Does anybody, before we get going into how to set up, how to optimize, troubleshoot, anything like that, does anybody have any questions at this time? Was there anything that you want to share on your experience of running Google Ads? Go ahead and put it in the chat there. We can certainly answer that. But I just want to give a place stop holder here for someone if they want to ask some questions. If not, I'm going to go ahead and continue on. So, how do we set up Google Local Services? Screenshot this little URL here, and we'll have it in the follow-up recording of this. But this is where you go to sign up for it if you do not have Google Local Services. Okay, and so you can even just type in Google Local Services Ads, and you'll find this URL here. All right, and so when you start this process, they're gonna kind of walk you through it, right? And so they're going to tell you what are the eligibilities, what documents you're going to have to fill out. So you've got to go through that process there. And ultimately, let me just go back here. We want to have that documentation together. The certificate of insurance. We want to have the IICRC firm level certification. And you also want to make sure you have the ability to do the background check and send your driver's license or some sort of photo ID, right? So that helps you through that process there. How does the ranking system work? It's basically set up in a situation where the way Google displays your company is based on proximity to the customer's location. So if you're located in Chicago, Illinois, and you're closer to that searcher on Google, they're going to try to pair your company with them if you're certified and your review count is good number, and that's the next bullet down there. If your review score is high, your review count is high, you're going to be more likely recommended. Okay. The other thing that's going to go into factor here is how responsive you are to inquiries and requests. Are you open 24/7? Absolutely, most of the clients we work with are open 24/7, and you got to make sure you put it on there. Just because your office hours are 8 to 5, make sure it says 24/7. Whether or not you receive serious complaints or repeat complaints for your business. So if you're getting a lot of bad reviews on your Google Maps profile, this is going to negatively impact your Google Local Services quite heavily. Okay, so if you do get some negative reviews, got to outweigh it with positive, right? And so ultimately, the whole goal of the ranking system is here is Google's in business to make money, right? And so ultimately, you want to make sure you're following all these steps about getting reviews and showing your service area, showing your hours, and making sure your budget is in a good situation so that you can get those reviews. Okay, so how do you win with Google Local Services? I know that slide was a little bit more wordy on the other side, but ultimately, how you win with Google Local Services is dialing in your service area, your profile, and your budget. Make sure your jobs are marked as booked if a call comes in and you're going out to do an estimate. If that job is won, then mark it as complete within Google Local Services, and I'll show you where you do that. All of this provides feedback to Google saying that that was a good job. I want to keep sending, you more good jobs, and they need to know that feedback along the way. Okay. So the other thing is dealing with disputes that will get you a really good return on investment, and you want to make sure that you're driving verified leads for every job that comes through there. Okay. So let's dial into the profile. So when you set up your profile here, this is kind of what the screen looks like. I blocked out a couple areas here, but basically what you're going to do on your profile is you're going to set a budget. I would highly recommend you open this up to be at a high level. So you can go up to, I believe, 9,999 per week. Now that might sound scary, and it might say, hey, we're going to give you 30 to 40 review job potential. Never seen a situation where that has happened unless there's a major event that comes through, right? So most people, they go in and say, I'm only going to spend $500 a month. Well, what you're competing against is other franchises and other independents that are setting that budget much higher, and Google's going to prefer them in the rotation. So make sure you set that budget higher than what you're really wanting to spend. You can always pause it. You can always modify that budget. But if you don't start on a high basis, I'm afraid that you're going to get in your situation that other people are just outbidding you there and have higher budgets, and you're not going to get the visibility you need, right? You want to make sure your ad schedule is updated. Too many times I've seen where the office hours are not 24/7 and you're doing 24/7 work. Typically the overnight calls are a little bit more expensive, but they're usually a little bit more profitable, right? And so make sure it's 24/7 if you're truly 24/7. Don't just have your office hours. Make sure you set up all the bio information that Google asks for. So name, address, phone number, your website, how many years you've been in business, do you have BBB accreditation? Every single option that they give you through the setup process, make sure you select that off there, right? The next section down is what's called job types. Job types are water, fire, mold inspection, flooring, even painting, other categories, roofing, sort of all of those different profiles right there. It might sound weird to have roofing and painting and flooring, but they're ultimately, if they're in the water damage category, I would select as many as possible to start with. And if you start getting some calls that come in that just aren't related, typically not, if you select painting or flooring, you're not going to get a flooring call. It's going to be related to some sort of damage related to water damage, right? And the consumer just searched about it that way. So I would open up as many categories on the job types within Google Local Services as possible. If you're doing mold and you're doing inspections and mold remediation in there, select both of them. So open them up, and then you can always pull them back as needed. You want to make sure you set up your service areas. My recommendation on service areas is that go wider than narrow, okay? And so it gives you the ability to put towns and zip codes and counties in there, okay? And so typically what I recommend is go around, let's say you're in Chicago, right? And you're mainly servicing maybe south side of Chicago. Go a little bit wider. Go into Indiana. Go into further south in Illinois. And what this does is gives you those fringe opportunities, because many other people are going to be focused on maybe a much tighter area. And so you're going to win jobs. You're going to win jobs that they're not in that service area, right? And so as you get more jobs coming in from Google, and you're giving that feedback back, they're going to start recommending you for those more prime areas. So don't make it so your service area is so tight that you don't get those fringe opportunities where other people are not going after. Let's see here. We already talked about business hours. Make sure you add photos. Use personality in the photos. Update photos on a weekly to bi-weekly basis of jobs that you've done, pictures of your team, of your office location, all those sorts of things. And again, if Google gives you that option in the platform, take advantage of it and do the extra step of providing that data and fill out your profile as much as possible, because it does have a dramatic impact on Google saying this company is really engaged. That we want to test them out at least and make sure they're answering their phone. We're going to send them some jobs, right? And the more frequently and consistently you can do with that, the better off you're going to be. So I've been talking for about 10 minutes here. So everybody still listening? Everybody, does this make sense? All of these tips on dialing on your profile, go ahead and type a 1 in the chat if that makes sense. And feel free to drop any questions along the way if you do have them. Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Okay, so the second piece here is marking your jobs as booked. All right, so here's a picture of a job that comes in the Google Local Services. This is the desktop version. There is an app that you can install on your phone, your iPhone or Android, and you can do the same sort of thing out of there. But typically, what it looks like here is you got a lead, you got what type of service it came in, and then there'll be a call recording here. Okay. And so if this call comes in, you listen to the call after the fact, and this call was scheduled, definitely mark this as booked up here at the top. You see this little white button up here. Even if you didn't win the job, mark it as booked because it was a qualified call that came in, and it was one that resulted in some sort of engagement with the customer, right? And so this gives feedback back to Google saying, I want to send you more like this, right? And so that's a big step there. There's also the ability to put in customer notes and email addresses and things like that. It might sound like overkill if you've got a CRM or some system that you're using like Dash or Aliware or something like that. But putting some notes in here, again, it's that engagement factor, and you're filling out additional information to give feedback back to Google that this is a qualified booked appointment that happened, okay? And so you basically want to provide as much insight into that and feedback back to them on the booked appointments, and that will help you get more of those booked appointments, okay? On the flip side here, I talked about disputes. Now, disputes are a major factor in driving down that cost and getting you credits back. The way the credit system works here, well, first of all, here's the dispute button. Let me go back here just 1 second. You'll see these 3 little lines over here. My red arrow is right in front of it, but that's where that dispute button is right there. And so if this call comes in and this is not a qualified person, meaning they're one of those categories, the solicitation, spam, all that, you're going to hit that dispute button, okay? And basically what you're going to then do is say, this was not a qualified lead, it's outside of our area, not a service we provide, spam, calling about employment, right? So those are the options as of right now that you can dispute, and you will get credits back on that. The great thing about this is they give you credits back versus pay-per-click, right? And so it does sometimes takes 30 to 45 days to get that credit. They don't issue like a refund on your card, but they'll take that off of the charges for the next month, right? So, sometimes when you have a budget, let's say $3,000 for the month for Google Local Services ads, you might get $1,000 in credits back because they were some calls that come in that were unqualified, right? And so if you're not doing this step, you're truly missing out on saving yourself some money. One of the most important steps that is so commonly overlooked is driving reviews. I get it. In this industry, there's difficult situations that happen with insurance billing or delays and all these things, right? And so sometimes it's hard to say, well, I don't want to ask for that review because I don't want to get a negative review. Do not worry about the negative reviews. Everybody gets them. It's how you respond to the negative reviews and then overcome the more positive reviews from it, right? And so you can ask for reviews directly in Google Local Services here. And so this is the review platform here. And you can kind of see this is a client of ours that went from 100 reviews and a year and a half later, they're at 926. And this profile, I'm not going to go into detail on who this client is, but this profile covers a large metropolitan area because they truly committed into this process, right? And so this is a very important part. The number of reviews are a very big factor in it. If you provide a great service, Google is going to keep rewarding you by sending you more people, right? And so you can leverage that review ask section within Google Local Services. The other question I get a lot is, how do I increase my lead flow? All right. And this is one for those that said, hey, I'm already running Google Local Services. Maybe you're not getting much out of it. All right. So there's some tips for you. How do you increase your lead flow is opening up your budget. If it's really low, work on opening that up and just watch it closely, right? That's a huge factor. The other thing is expanding your service areas, expanding your job types, improving your ad schedule or your business hours. So your business hours versus your ad schedule is 2 different settings in there. And so maybe that's just too narrow, right? The other thing is make sure you're closing out every lead. Mark it as booked, scheduled, or archived. And so those are the ways that you can give those feedback and improve things along the way. And then finally, as a recap, request, verify reviews from every job that you have in Google Local Services. Even if you feel like things didn't go amazing out there, have a conversation with that homeowner and say, we want to provide an amazing service to you. We love your feedback. And if you can give us some feedback on that, we'd really appreciate it. We strive for a 5-star experience, right? And so you're kind of ingraining in their mind that, we're looking for a 5-star review here. Okay. So those are tips there. So far what we covered: introduction, common issues, our process, what works, and action plans, right? And so I want to make sure that everybody gets a kind of a recap here of those things that are important. So if you're not signed up on Google Local Services, we'll send you over the link where you can sign up for it. There's no sort of affiliation or anything like that. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do here is increase your visibility in your area. So this is why I recommend the service. Make sure you gather your documents before you sign up for this, right? You want to have that firm level certification. You want to have your certificate of insurance showing $1 million, and be ready to do a background check where you can send your identification over there. You want to determine your budget. I would not start out at $250 per week. You're just not going to have the results you're looking for. Increase that budget to, $1,500, $2,000, and work your way up from there. Okay. Determine your service area. If it's a small area in a metropolitan area, expand that out wider than you normally would so that you can get some wins, and then you're going to ultimately improve things over time. Okay. The next thing you want to do is making sure you're adding photos to your profile. Office photos, job photos, team photos, all of those things are important. Fill out all the information. Fill out your website, bio, address, tracking phone number. That's an important part that I didn't really talk about. But if you set up a tracking number for Google Local Services, you can really track how many calls are coming in through that versus someone calling a business number or calling from your website. Okay. The next thing you want to do is set your business hours and your job types. So I talked about those before, about opening those job types up and then narrowing them back as needed if you're getting some unqualified things that are coming in. Okay. So hopefully everybody has some action items from this. We're going to do a replay for this. And so you're going to get a recording of it that you can rewatch. But I truly would challenge you to jot down 3 things you're going to check if you're running Google Local Services, and 3 things that if you're not running Google Local Services that you ultimately are going to start working on, whether it's getting the documentation together, whether it's making sure you're asking reviews, all of those different aspects, right? And then who are you going to ask to do this? Who are you going to ask on your team, or who are you going to maybe hire to help you do that, right? So take action. Never put off tomorrow what you can do today. Thomas Jefferson, love the quote. It's imperfect action that moves us all forward. And I truly believe that it's best to take action and perfect it after the fact. But that's my mantra, right? So again, we've worked with a lot of different companies in the industry. We have companies that have been with us for 3+ years that are generating tons of work through these sort of channels like Google Local Services and whatnot. These are a couple of examples here of some of the companies that we work with and how many, on average, how many leads they're getting on a monthly basis. And so this company's been with us for over 6 years now. But ultimately, if you need some help, you have some questions, you can go to this link here, restorationmarketing.com/calendar, or you can give us a call at this number. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And you can schedule an appointment with me at any time if you have any questions along the way. And this is our process. It's about improving your visibility. Remember, I showed you before where you could be the best known company, but if nobody knows you exist, then ultimately you've got to change that around. And Google Local Services is one of those perspectives. And then you want to increase your branding, and you want to have conversion metrics on these channels that are going to help you ultimately drive a good return on investment. So this is our approach that we use for our clients. Today we focused on the Google Local Services side of things. And so if you want the copy of my book or the checklists, you can go to restorationmarketing.com/2024. There will be a replay there, and all of these resources will be there for you to download for free. There's no catches there. Just go ahead and download it. And if you want to book a schedule appointment with me to kind of talk about your strategy and your unique situation, you can schedule that appointment right there on that screen.